Grand Rising family, this is your girl, Empress Goddess, the Georgia Peach. I hope all is well with the loved ones today. This is part two of from Hebrews to Negroes and White Cargo. This is a combination of two books that I'm doing a series on about the hidden history, behind the African Americans or the black people slavery, and about the lost history of whites who were enslaved. Okay, my love. So without further ado, because I need to get on this phone and handle some business. I don't know why this is a company to keep charging my damn bank card. So I got to get this straightened out. So I'll be here, trying to take care of business. But y'all, hope y'all enjoy this book. Well, because it's like we still have maybe 4 or 5 more parts to this. But for now, this is part two of From Hebrews to Negroes and White Cargo. This is From Hebrews to Negroes.
Real. There was no Middle East in biblical times, and even during so, it was not until I was older that I started asking questions of what lies I was being taught by Western civilization education. Chapter 5, The Melanin Mystery. Lamentations 5:10. Our skin, Israelites, was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. Job 30:30. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. Song of Solomon 1:5. I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Here we have 3 Bible verses in which the Israelites are admitting to their skin being black. There are many skeptics that will try and debunk these scriptures by saying Adam and all the biblical characters were ruddy or red. We all know that there isn't a race of human beings the color red, except for a human embryo in the womb. We also know that Adam and Eve could not have populated the world if they had white skin without melanin. Skin with no melanin or little to no melanin cannot darken. If the white race cannot darken, then they cannot produce any race of brown people. Brown/black people can get lighter. This is evident in skin disorders and with fading creams. Skeptics that use this theory need to research biology, genetics, the evolution of all the races of mankind, and its relation to melanin. Moving forward, we all know that there are deserts and extreme hot temperatures in Africa/Middle East. It is a known fact that when black people suffer from dehydration, malnutrition, or illnesses such as cancer or renal failure, their skin tends to get darker. When black people die, they are usually darker in appearance days later. Black skin turns darker when the body is dehydrated from the sun, and in times of famine, lack of water and food. This is proof that the Israelite skin was even more black when they faced famine, Lamentations 5:10, or when they were exposed to the extreme heat from the UV rays of the sun, Job 30:30. This doesn't happen for white races, such as European Caucasians and even Caucasian Arabs. If it did, then we should expect to see the European Caucasians in Israel, Middle East, the European Caucasians in India, and the Caucasian Arabs in Africa/Middle East get darker in the sun, just like light-skinned African Americans. But this doesn't happen, as we can see by watching TV. White races become paler when going through the effects of severe malnutrition on the body. When white skin is exposed to the effects of the sun's UV rays, their skin gets red and irritated. With long-term exposure, the end result is often skin cancer or a leathery, wrinkled, dried skin appearance. Melanin in people of color protects the skin from the one thing that all living creatures need to thrive: the sun. Fact. It is a known fact that civilization cannot thrive in extreme cold temperatures without sunlight. This is why, for most people, it is agreed that the Garden of Eden originated along the Nile River in Africa. Let's break down this thing called melanin. Black people produce melanin even when we are not in the sun. There are two types of melanin melanocytes produce: eumelanin and pheomelanin. The particular type of melanin that a person of color produces is eumelanin, which is more effective in protecting the skin from UV rays than the melanin that white skin produces. Eumelanin is responsible for brown or black hair and dark skin that tans easily. Light skinned African Americans can quickly tan in just a couple of hours on the beach in Miami, while white Arabs can live over in the Middle East for months and still appear to not have a tan. This is because of our genetic inheritance of melanin, which comes from our ancestors who were taken as slaves from Africa. White races that produce mostly pheomelanin tend to have red or blonde hair, freckles, and light colored skin that tans poorly. Because pheomelanin does not protect the skin from UV radiation, people with more pheomelanin have increased risk of skin damage, sunburn, actinic keratosis, and skin cancer caused by constant sun exposure. Furthermore, Caucasians only produce melanin when in the sun, after the UV rays have penetrated the epidermis and caused damage to the skin. Melanin also functions as a free radical scavenger because it affects the lipids that maintain moisture in the outer layer of our skin. Moist skin fares better over time than dry skin, and for this reason, black skin ages less slash wrinkles less than white skin. The original man had to be able to withstand the sun. It is well known that the original man didn't come from Antarctica, but instead originated in Africa, just as it is pretty well known that melanin is responsible for skin color, eye color, and hair color. The dominant features of mankind throughout the world are brown slash black hair, brown eyes, and brown skin. There are more people in the world with brown skin, black hair, and brown eyes than people with white skin, blonde hair, or blue eyes. This proves that all mankind came from a man and woman that were able to pass down the ability to produce melanin even at its highest concentration. Without the ability to produce melanin or tan, the whole world would be white. It is medically proven that when people lack the ability to produce melanin, albino, the result is white skin, blonde hair, and red, green, blue eyes. In fact, most albinos have blue eyes. It is also a fact that albinos also have medical problems like sensitive skin and visual complaints, photosensitivity. Many Dravidian East Indian albinos, Native American Indian albinos look identical to white people. The Nuristani people of Pakistan slash Afghanistan look like Caucasians, blonde hair, and have more blue slash green-eyed offspring than Europeans. Some say they are Afghanistan slash Pakistan slash Indian albinos that have evolved over the years. Others say they are immigrants from other European nations. These Nuristani people are nevertheless still pale in skin color despite living in an area with adequate sun and heat to produce vitamin D or a tan in a melaninated individual. This phenomenon is also seen in Iraqis and Iranians who are identical in appearance to Europeans yet live in hot climates in the desert. White people living in South Africa called Afrikaners are still white even after having generations, 500 plus years, of children in the hot temperatures of Africa. This proves that skin color is not an adaptation to sunlight or heat. Also, people of color can have variations in hair texture and color, as seen by the dark-skinned Melanesians of the Solomon Islands with blonde hair, the dark-skinned Australian Aborigines, and the dark-skinned Dravidian Indian. Africans with ocular albinism, Nettleship Falls albinism, or juvenile uveitis can have blue eyes without Caucasian mixing. There is no disease or genetic disorder that causes white skin to turn black. For this reason, it is only logical to say that the original man could not have been a white man. The most important thing that people should get out of these examples is that people of color can get lighter in regards to their skin color, hair color, and eye color because it is a reflection on melanin production. The less melanin production in the hair, skin, and eyes equates to lighter colors than brown. These are usually caused by recessive traits or genetic mutations that prohibit the production of melanin. Again, there is no disease or genetic disorder that makes the white race turn dark as Black people, Dravidian Indians, or the Aboriginal people of Australia, or the people living on the Andaman Islands. There is no reverse albino disorder. So let's explain where melanin comes from and why it is not a genetic mutation. The third eye and melanin. Most people do not know that it is the pineal gland, which is also referred to as the third eye or all seeing eye, that produces melatonin, which in turn stimulates the pituitary gland to produce MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone, which in turn produces melanocytes, which produce melanin. Fact: the pineal gland is shaped like a pine cone and is considered the all seeing eye in Hinduism and Buddhism. People that had their pineal gland fully activated were believed to be kings and gods. The pine cone symbol can be found in the ancient ruins of the Indonesians, Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, and the Christians. It is seen in the staff of Osiris, the Catholic Church, Vatican, and in ancient Babylonian relics. Mystical, esoteric, and Gnostic teachings state that the pineal gland is the connecting link between the physical and spiritual world. The pineal gland has a lens, retina, and cornea, just like our physical eyes. The pineal gland is also responsible for your DNA system, maintaining the body's circadian sleep-wake cycle, dreams, emotions, behavior, intuition, memory, learning, body temperature, and regulating the onset of puberty in females. To many, it is referred to as being the seat of the soul or the seat of consciousness. It is capable of making a compound called DMT, dimethyltryptamine. DMT is released from the pineal gland during extraordinary states such as time of death and time of birth. This gland is stated to be the mechanism from which we enter and leave our physical bodies. Facts about the pineal gland include: pineal gland produces serotonin, which is considered the happy hormone. Pineal gland produces melatonin, which is considered the hormone of darkness. During meditation, the pineal and pituitary glands have been shown to vibrate in unison. Pineal gland got its name because it resembles a pine cone. Vatican City has a large statue in the shape of a pine cone in the courtyard of the pine cone. Pineal gland has the second highest blood flow in the body next to the kidneys. Pineal gland accumulates the most fluoride in the body, and this is one reason for its calcification. Much research has been done to prove that fluoride in our drinking water is used by the elites to dumb Americans down by calcifying our pineal glands. Pineal gland is light sensitive, so it is stimulated by light. Pineal gland is outside the blood-brain barrier, which makes it technically not within the brain. ELF, extremely low frequency, adversely affects the pineal gland. Unplugging all electronic devices, ELF devices, while you are asleep will help increase dream recall, lucidity, and astral projection. The ancient Sumerians gave the pineal gland the description of a pine cone. You can see it in all the symbolism encoded in ancient art and different cultures. Some examples are the movie Stargate, the Eye of Ra, Staff of Osiris, Lord of the Underworld, King Tut sculptures, Kundalini serpents, Babylonian gods, Hinduism, pineal gland, and the third eye, etc. Buddhism hair is the symbol of the pineal gland. Even the Vatican has a lot of pine cone symbolism. Vatican Square has a gigantic statue of a pine cone. Knowledge of sacred geometry focuses on the pineal gland. Fact: By the age of 40, the pineal calcification rates within different races are African descent, 5 to 15%, Asians/Asiatics, 5 to 15%, and Europeans, 60 to 80%. In the late 90s, a scientist by the name of Jennifer Luke carried out the first study of the effects of sodium fluoride on the pineal gland. She determined that the pineal gland, located in the middle of the brain, was a target for fluoride. The pineal gland simply absorbed more fluoride than any other physical matter in the body, even bones. It was found that the pineal gland was like a magnet to sodium fluoride. Sodium fluoride calcified the pineal gland and made it no longer effective in balancing the entire hormonal processes through the body. Various research has been done proving that sodium fluoride goes to the most important gland in the brain. It's the only thing that attacks the most important center of our gland in the brain. It's prevalent in food, beverages, rat poison, in our bath and drinking water. Sodium fluoride is put in 90% of the United States water supply. Water filters bought in supermarkets do not take the fluoride out. Only reverse osmosis or water distillation removes fluoride. Sodium fluoride is everywhere, and tons of articles have been released stating that the sodium fluoride in our water supply, food, soft drinks, toothpaste, and mouthwashes are used to dumb down the masses, literally. It is said that fluoride was introduced into the water by the Nazis and by the Russians in their concentration camps to make the camp population docile. Melanin is also found in hair, our eyes, iris, and in brain tissue. Again, this is why the majority of the people living in this world have brown eyes, black hair, and some shade of brown skin with the ability to tan. Scientists have proven that inside melanocytes, pigment cells, there are tiny packets called melanosomes that contain melanin. The 4 states in the maturing of these melanosomes accounts for racial differences. Stage 1. The melanosome is empty and doesn't have the machinery to make melanin. Stage 2. The melanosome has the machinery to make melanin, but is empty of melanin. Stage 3. The machinery is there and the melanosome is half filled with melanin. Stage 4. The machinery is there and the melanosome is completely filled with melanin. White people have mainly stages 1 and 2, while all other people of color that have limited melanin and a limited ability to tan fall into stage 3. White Arabs, white Asians, white Indians, white Latinos, with blacks, light-skinned and dark-skinned, having more of stage 4. This is the reason why some light-skinned blacks can tan and get darker very easily with limited amounts of exposure to the sun, while light-skinned Arabs can live in the hot deserts of the Middle East and still have white skin. Scientific research also revealed that most white people are unable to produce melatonin because their pineal glands are often calcified and non-functioning, especially seen after age 40. If white people believed white skin was superior to black skin, then the tanning industry, tanning beds, lotions, creams, sprays, wouldn't be so popular in the white culture, especially when whites lay out in the sun to try and tan, but get a darker pinker/redder color, despite the health risks that follow with that of skin cancer. Melanin protects black skin from abnormal mutation of skin cells that cause skin cancer in whites. Those that lack melanin have different color hair, different color eyes, green, blue, gray, and white skin, European/Caucasoid/Anglo-Saxon people. We also know that it is not naturally possible for a white man and white woman to produce an African child or a dark-skinned child. Neither is it possible to produce the different shades of brown-skinned individuals, even to the darkest shade of brown, from 2 Caucasians. Why? Because they do not have the genetic DNA material to produce different shades of brown people with different textures of hair. This has been proven scientifically. It doesn't happen naturally in life. The saying, you can't make something out of nothing, but once you have something, you can take away from it, makes sense when you apply it to the black race. Blacks can have offspring that are lighter and they can get lighter. Example, light skinned Nigerians, vitiligo, albinism, fading creams. But white people can't have brown slash black skinned offspring, even if they live in hot climates their whole life. Fact: whites have been living in South America, South Africa, and Australia, where there is plenty of sunlight for almost a half a century, but still have not produced brown slash black babies. This is yet another reason why you can't blame the weather on the skin color of a people living in a particular region in the world. Melanin trickery, curse or blessing. When Europeans slash Caucasians stay in the sun too long without sunscreen, their skin gets red and irritated. They cannot stay in the sun hours and hours without sunscreen. It would be like torture. People with melanin simply get darker, as this is an adaptive, protective, natural process inherited in their DNA. For this reason, people with melanin do not need sunscreen. Blacks can live in hot climates exposed to the sun without sunscreen, oftentimes without a shirt or hat. With that being said, we know that ancient Egyptian drawings do not ever show the Egyptians enslaving a race of white people called the Hebrew Israelites. The Caucasian race did not build the pyramids with their shirts off in the hot deserts of Egypt for over 400 years. We know that in animal wildlife, an albino or white offspring is usually at a disadvantage when adapting slash camouflaging within its own natural habitat. The polar bear, most people don't know, has black skin if you were to shave all its hair off. Dark skin absorbs heat, which, along with body fat, helps insulate the core temperature of the polar bear's body while living in very cold climates. In contrast to the popularity of fading creams all across the world, there is no pill, injection, or cream that a white European Caucasian person can administer to make their skin permanently brown. We see all around the world where women in different countries, such as Thailand, the Philippines, Dominican Republic, and even in Africa, spend millions of dollars on fading creams to make their skin lighter. This is brainwashing that has affected all countries to believe that black is bad and white is good. Muhammad Ali commented on this brainwashing in regards to America. We've been brainwashed. Everything good is supposed to be white. We look at Jesus and we see a white with blonde hair and blue eyes. We look at all the angels. We see white with blonde hair and blue eyes. Now, I'm sure there's a heaven in the sky and this color folks die and go to heaven. Where are the colored angels? They must be in the kitchen preparing milk and honey. We look at Miss America. We see white. We look at Miss World. We see white. We look at Miss Universe. We see white. Even Tarzan, the king of the jungle in Black Africa, is white. White Owl cigars, white swan soap, white cloud tissue paper, white rain hair rinse, white tornado floor wax. All the good cowboys ride the white horses and wear white hats. Angel food cake is the white cake, but the devil's food cake is chocolate. When are we going to wake up as a people and end the lie that white is better than black? Muhammad Ali, 1967 to 1971. Society has taught us that dark skin is ugly and that white skin is the standard of beauty. This is a trick of the devil. If dark skin was a curse, then the curse of leprosy would make your skin black, not white as snow. Even parents who are dark skinned will sometimes wish that their kids or grandkids will come out light, even before the child is born. This self-hate against our black skin is plaguing Black America. We have been tricked to believe that dark skin is a curse or is bad. This can be seen in the 2011 movie Dark Girls. The media today shows mostly women who are white, light-skinned blacks, or women who are light-skinned but from different countries. This is also seen in beauty pageants. Sometimes these pageant contestants may not even be the true representation of what the majority of the people in that country really look like. In 2012, 16-year-old Tarika Waters lost her crown after not looking like the natives of Fiji. She was of European/Fiji ancestry. She was replaced by Koine Vakalaloma, who is a little browner but still did not look like the native Fijians. This is why we rarely see dark skinned women in music videos, TV shows, commercials, or the news. Most children's shows on Disney and Nickelodeon have mainly white characters and little to no black characters. Even teenage shows like Saved by the Bell and Beverly Hills 90210 show the lack of African Americans in TV. This is called childhood brainwashing. Most of the women on the Latino channel Telemundo are light skinned Latinos. Most of the commercials in third world countries show light skinned or white women. When we see pictures or video footage of Israel on TV, we don't ever see the Ethiopian Jews, and we also don't see Ethiopian Israeli soldiers on TV. Why do we have melanin? Any black person on the street preaching that Jesus Christ was black would be quickly corrected or ridiculed. So what is going on? These are just tricks of the devil to confuse and destroy God's order of things. The devil is a liar and likes to deceive people into believing a lie. If the original man was a white man, what would be the need for melanin? Why would God make the pineal gland to produce melanin if the original man and woman didn't need it or have it? Melanin is not a genetic defect or mutation because the majority of people in the world have some shade of brown skin. Why would God create the original man and woman, white, Adam and Eve, to populate the earth if they couldn't physically withstand the sun, which is the most important physical thing on earth, key to the survival of life? Also, if God made the white man in his image in the beginning, then we should all be white because the white man cannot get darker. The white race is still the minority race from a worldview, even though millions of brown/black people, including the natives of every country worldwide, were killed worldwide via famine, disease, abortion, forced sterilization/eugenics, slavery, homicide, and wars. Fact: the original natives of many of the Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Haiti, Bahamas, Cuba, were people of color with hair textures ranging from curly to straight black hair. Ancient black and white pictures of these tribes show them to be people with different shades of brown skin color, even to the darkest of shades like an African or Dravidian Indian. Today, there are various shades of brown because of race mixing down the years with their white European invaders/colonizers. 90% of the natives in Puerto Rico, called the Taino Locono Arawak people, were killed off in the 1500s when the European Spaniards came with smallpox, which they had no immunity to, as well as harsh warfare and enslavement. The Carafuna/Garifuna Carib people also were the original natives of parts of South America and the Caribbean. They often fought with the Taino Locono Arawak people. They, like the Taino people, experienced a drop in their population with diseases, warfare, and slavery brought by European nations, Dutch, Portuguese, Spanish, French, during the slave trade. The Taino and Carib people both integrated with Africans brought to their land during the slave trades. Mixture with the natives, Africans, and white Europeans would give us the mixture of people we see today in the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Puerto Rico, and South America. This is why we see a strong dominance in these islands of people of color, black/brown skin, with different European languages, Spanish, French, and different grades of hair. Puerto Rico would have the largest extermination of the brown-skinned Taino natives.
Y'all, I'm here in the house, like I'm trying to take care of some business. Somebody, I don't know, somebody's been taking every month. Somebody's been taking some damn money off my card, and I called last month. They told me they ain't had no damn transaction or something like that. So I'm on the phone trying to get that straightened out. But I'm here.
Following the landscape. However, over years, the color of Puerto Rico changed thanks to white European Spaniards, just like in the Philippines with the black Negrito Eta people, so that today it is the lightest island in the Caribbean. Today, you can still find the black Garifuna/Carafuna people in Honduras, Belize, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. You can still find the Taino people scattered in the Caribbean as well, still letting people know that they were the original inhabitants of the lands before the Europeans came and changed the face of their islands. Remember, most of the natives of the lands of every country prior to the invasion of the Europeans were a brown/black people. Once the Europeans, French, Dutch, Spaniards, Portuguese, English, Jews, Greeks, Italians, arrived on the worldwide scene, they changed the name of the lands they conquered, the languages, and lightened the skin color of the people that were already living there. Africa and its different country states were divided/named by Europeans. Before they arrived, there was no Nigeria, Uganda, Cameroon, and Kenya. Different empires like the Ghanaian Empire and the Axum Ethiopian Empire possessed certain territories. Look far back in history and you will see this to be true. Nevertheless, traces of the original natives can still be found if you search for the truth. If God made the white man in his image, why would the white skin of the biblical leprosy be a curse? And why did he curse famous biblical characters' white skin instead of black skin? It doesn't make sense. Melanin is real and it's like a natural sunscreen imprinted in our DNA. When UV light rays hit people's skin with melanin, they get darker. This is about as natural as how plants grow when they receive sunlight and water. When people with melanin move to another climate or place where the sun is less, their skin may lighten. However, just as quick as the skin can lighten in the lack of sunlight, so can it turn back to its browner color in the sun. This is a form of adaptation to the environment. Europeans living in South Africa, Brazil, Cuba, the Caribbeans, and Australia have not turned brown or black like the natives of the land, despite having generations of children and living near the equator. We know this. This is because they can't. They're
Well, I tell you, I be trying to be nice, but you can't be nice to a nigga, you know. I already told you what the situation I be going through. But see, I be nice. I try to be nice, you know. I say because I live by example. I know how I was raised. Treat people the way you want to be treated. I ain't gonna do him like he did me. You know what I'm saying? I went and got me some breakfast. Went and got me a steak and egg biscuit. Sweet tea. Got him one and a sweet tea. So I stopped in the kitchen. He in the kitchen now. Because I was washing clothes. He putting the clothes out of the washing machine in the dryer. I stopped in the kitchen, put his biscuit on the stove, and put his sweet tea next to it. So I just go up there just then. It's still on the stove. He gone. So I called him. I said, "Oh, you didn't want the biscuit and stuff I brought you?" "Well, you didn't say." I said, "I ain't had to say nothing." I said, "You be acting crazy as hell, Negro." I said, "If you seen me when I put the shit up on the stove. If I put it up on the stove, you know it's for your motherfucking ass." And hung up in his face.
lack of melanin because it's not in their DNA. This is a perfect example of how you can discredit anybody that states black people are the result of white people being in the sun over thousands of years. Do Africans that move to London after 5 to 10 generations of intermarriage with their own kind eventually turn white or light-skinned because of the lack of sunlight or heat? The answer is no. There's medium to light-skinned brown Africans living in Botswana, Namibia, Angola, Zimbabwe, and South Africa, called the Sand People. They are genetically the oldest inhabitants of these lands, but yet are medium/light brown skinned Africans with slanted Asian looking eyes. There are black/dark skinned people living in Palestine, Turkey, Iraq, Iran, India, and even the Philippines. If you ask any one of these people, why are there people in their country dark as Africans/African Americans, they will tell you that it is because of the sun and the heat. This is false. Some of the people saying these false answers themselves are white or very fair living in these same climates and are not brown/black skinned, so they automatically prove their theory to be wrong. Many Arabs living in the hot desert, Middle East, and some fair-skinned Aryan Indians believe that mankind's skin color is based solely on the exposure of sun. They believe that their original forefathers, like Adam, Abraham, Noah, and Ishmael, for instance, were white-skinned. They will say that mankind originated out of Mesopotamia, and that the black man came from the white man. If they know the truth, they will say that all mankind originated and migrated out of Africa. The rest were forcefully removed from Africa via slavery and captivity. Within the last 2,000 years, you could attribute the light brown skinned individuals in North Africa, North America, South America, the Caribbean, the Middle East, and Asia to the result of race mixing with Europeans or Arabs. But what about 4,000 to 5,000 years ago? What color were most people during these times in BC? Melanin in skin color is primarily genetic, as we know. It existed since the beginning of time and still does today. There are pictures and records dating back to 3000 BC that prove that the ancient Sumerians, Egyptians, Ethiopians, Persians, Mesopotamians/Babylonians, and Hebrews were brown/black skinned people. However, a lot of this information is hidden from us by the same white race, Europeans, that constantly warred, invaded, conquered, killed, or enslaved other lands throughout history. Remember, the ancient Black Egyptians were invaded by the Greeks, Persians, Romans, and the Arabic Islamic Empire of the North. The Egyptians did not travel in ships everywhere, trying to conquer everyone else's land. This is why mostly everyone in North Africa and the Middle East speak Arabic and not their own ancient language. The ancient Egyptians didn't speak Arabic. The ancient Canaanites and Phoenicians did not speak Arabic. The Black Philistines did not speak Arabic as well. The ancient inhabitants of Israel spoke Paleo-Hebrew, which is similar to the ancient Phoenician language, not modern Aramaic Syriac. Aramaic was possibly inspired by the Arameans, who were a Northwest Semitic people who lived in the biblical land of Aram, Syria. The original inhabitants of Libya did not speak Arabic, nor were they Caucasian-looking Arabs. This is a known fact if you do your research. The ancient Libyans were Black and ruled the 22nd and 23rd Egyptian dynasties as pharaohs of Egypt. The pictures of Ayuput II, Libyan Egyptian pharaoh of the 23rd dynasty, Libyan pharaoh Shoshenq I, and Libyan pharaoh Osirkon II can be seen for yourself on the internet. The proof they were Black is evident by looking at the carved pictures on the walls in Egypt as well as the head statues. This is in BC time, before Christ, hundreds of years before the Arab Muslims invaded North Africa and the Middle East in 600 AD. Ancient pictures of Libyans, Syrians, Canaanites, and Nubians, Ethiopians, in Egyptian paintings show that all of these nations were a Black people. Look up a picture. A Libyan, a Canaanite, a Syrian, and a Nubian bowed to Pharaoh the 18th dynasty, Cairo Museum. The current Egyptians are not Black anymore, like their picture drawings on the walls in the pyramids, because of the invading Europeans and Arab Muslims from the north, Japheth seed. Everywhere you go, people that have dark skin are usually economically, socially, and politically oppressed. But people tend to forget that the world started off primarily from brown/Black people and then got lighter. We as Blacks are taught that being dark is something bad, thanks to the media, and we tend to believe that intermixing with other races or people lighter than us will make everything all right. When we were segregated and enslaved, we wanted what we couldn't have. We wanted to go shopping where the whites went. We wanted to go to white schools, libraries, movies, restrooms, restaurants, and so on. We even wanted their white women and men. When slavery and segregation ended, we lost all our Black businesses and togetherness because we wanted to integrate into white society. We are now employees and consumers to other races than our own. And the last time I checked, I haven't seen Arabs, Latinos, Afghanistanis, Pakistanis, Indians, Italians, Greeks, Spaniards, Portuguese, Chinese, Filipinos, Japanese, Russians, Europeans, Jews, or whites breaking down doors to marry a Black man or Black woman. Nor do you see the other races working for Black people. These other races and cultures practice race preservation. Just look at their countries. Everyone looks the same, don't they? However, the white race slash European, British, France, Spaniard, etc., were known for the colonization and interbreeding of many countries throughout the world. This is why many Filipinos are light skinned and have Spanish last names. This is why the Haitians slash Africans speak French and the Dominicans speak Spanish, and neither believes they are related to each other or came from the other. This is why some Cubans can look white and some can also look black, but yet speak Spanish. This is why some Puerto Ricans can look white or look black. This is also why people in the UK slash British slash London have a similar accent to those people living in the British Virgin Islands and the Caribbean slash West Indies. This is also why there are different shades of brown skinned people living in India. Lastly, this is why African Americans have different shades of brown skin and non-African last names. The majority of the natives of the lands of the world started off brown slash black and later became lighter because of mixing of their races with the white races of Europe. Chapter 6, The Real Leprosy. So, I know you're wondering, if the original man was not white, but was a brown-skinned man, then where does the white race come from? There are tons of theories surrounding this question, going from the Yakub theory to the fallen angels theory. But we first have to look at concrete evidence because people will only believe if they can see the evidence for themselves. Remember, in the Bible, it was never a curse or a punishment to turn someone's skin black. In the Bible, the ancient biblical form of leprosy frequently was described as turning one's skin white. The Bible also compared the skin color of leprosy to being as white as snow. This is a common theme seen in the book of Leviticus. It is also mentioned in 2 Kings 5:27, when Elisha's servant Gehazi was cursed with Naaman's leprosy forever for being greedy and wanting all the rewards he could get for Elisha healing Naaman of the disease of white skin, leprosy. Gehazi wanted money, garments, olive yards, vineyards, sheep, oxen, men servants, and maidservants from Naaman instead of listening to what Elisha said. Gehazi lied about where he had been and what he had done and was then cursed with the mark of leprosy, which in biblical days was the mark of white skin. Not only was Gehazi given the curse of white skin, but his seed was also to have white skin forever. I don't know about you, but when the Bible says forever, it means until the end of time. So, whose seed today has skin as white as snow for generation after generation? Could the Bible have been referring to the beginning of the white race? This mystery has never been truly solved. 2 Kings 5:27. The leprosy, therefore, of Naaman shall cleave unto thee, and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper as white as snow. Interesting to note is that the white European nations have always, throughout history, been greedy like Elisha's servant Gehazi, warring with other nations, enslaving other nations, conquering other nations as their own, stealing the resources of these nations, and exterminating the brown original natives of the land. This can be seen by just looking at the European colonialism of India, Australia, the Virgin Islands, Africa, and America. It is all around us. Now, it could be just me, but I found this to be very interesting. The Bible describes leprosy as a disease that turns one's skin white. This is not the case in Hawaii, where the king of Hawaii, King Kamehameha V, approved the act to prevent the spread of leprosy. This law quarantined all the lepers of Hawaii and caused them to be moved to settlement colonies of Kalaupapa and Kalauaho on the island of Molokai. Europeans, of all people, were the ones that brought leprosy, influenza, syphilis, and other illnesses that were never seen before to the islands of Hawaii, killing thousands of native Hawaiians. A Catholic priest by the name of Priest Damien in 1864 arrived in Hawaii and devoted his life ministry to the lepers quarantined to the island. Priest Damien later contracted the disease of leprosy and died in 1889. Footage is widely available documenting the disease of leprosy as it inflicted the Hawaiians. None of the people of Hawaii affected with the disease of leprosy during this time turned white as snow.
Mhm.
Priest Damien was canonized by Pope Benedict XVI in 2009. Another example with the mark of white skin is found with Moses in Exodus 4:6, where Moses put his hands into God's bosom, and upon taking his hand out, it becomes leprous, as white as snow. In Numbers 12:10, Moses' sister Miriam's skin turned leprous as white as snow, as a lesson from God regarding racism. Yes, God does not promote racism. Moses' siblings, Aaron and Miriam, spoke out against Moses because of his marriage with an Ethiopian Cushite woman who was a descendant of Ham. In both miracle and punishment, God showed his power by changing brown skin to white skin. The key word in these two scenarios is that the Bible says their skin was leprous, as white as snow. So, does this mean they had acquired white skin or that they acquired the actual curse of leprosy? More importantly, what was leprosy back then? And was white skin even associated with the word leprosy in those times? We'll see later the difference in the Septuagint Bible version of these verses to compare. What would be the purpose of teaching a lesson, performing a miracle in Moses' case, or cursing someone with the biblical leprosy if their skin was already white? Leprosy in the biblical days was totally different than what we know now as leprosy, also known as Hansen's disease, present today. Modern day leprosy that we know of today is caused by a mycobacterium similar to the mycobacterium that causes tuberculosis. Leprosy in modern medicine, found in third world countries, is a granulomatous disease of the peripheral nerves, skin, and mucosa of the upper respiratory tract. Raised cutaneous wart-like skin lesions are the primary external sign. If you research on the internet, Yahoo or Google, and look at pictures of different people with modern leprosy, you will see that it is not a disease that turns the skin all white, like, for example, vitiligo. Vitiligo is known worldwide to turn the skin white. It is a depigmentation disorder, and despite what books or the internet tells you, it is mostly seen and found in African Americans, Africans, or people of color. Albinism is another genetic disorder that causes the skin to be completely white, just like snow. Albinism, when often covered on TV specials, is always shown in higher numbers in Africa, India, and South America. It is primarily seen in people with color or people with melanin. It is also seen by most people in America from African American parents. There are also fade creams that are on the market to permanently fade one's skin to a lighter color, such as used by rapper Lil Kim and baseball player Sammy Sosa. So, we have two major medical diseases still existing till this day, with the exception of the biblical leprosy, which are known or have been known to cause a person's skin to go from brown to white. There is no known medical disease that can make a person's skin go from white to black. The concentration of melanocytes or melanin an individual has is genetic, passed down from our ancestors. This is why the sun has no effect on the skin color of a baby in the womb. One reason being that the sun does not penetrate past the mother's skin to darken the baby's skin. The baby's skin color is already genetically determined by the parent's DNA. Modern religious teaching has made many blacks to believe that the curse of Canaan is black skin and all the suffering that blacks have endured for centuries. However, in the Bible, it never states this. In fact, there are many scriptures that mention that the Israelite skin color was black and not white. The word leprosy, just like the word Jehovah, was invented by man and placed in our Bibles to represent something. In this case, leprosy was meant to represent white skin. But did King James and other previous English translators not think that people would do the research and realize that leprosy was not a disease that turned the skin white? Lepers in India, Africa, China, and different parts of Asia are not white as snow. So, why is leprosy in the Bible associated with skin as white as snow? Everyone knows that when Jesus and the disciples visited the blind, they were visiting people that couldn't see. If they were visiting the crippled, it meant they were visiting people that couldn't walk. If someone in particular was a leper in the Bible, we usually associated this person as having white skin. Whether this was an albino person, a person with vitiligo, or a Caucasian in those times, we do know that being white as snow carried a negative stigma in the Bible. This proves that having brown or black skin was the norm in that area, and thus the Israelites, Canaanites, Philistines, Egyptians, Ethiopians, and Libyans of ancient times were a people of color. In Egypt, during the month of June, it is the norm to have temperatures of over 100 degrees. In Jerusalem, in June, it is the norm to have temperatures of over 90 degrees. How could the Egyptians and Israelites be white as snow living in this type of weather? How would they have survived without hats or sunscreen? Most pictures of the ancient black Egyptians show them to always have their shirts off, even in 100 plus degree weather. Everyone knows that the natives of most lands with hot climates are people of color. Never do we see a village of half naked, tribal white people running around in the jungle, the forest, or the desert. People without melanin that have skin closer to the color of snow live in northern countries where their bodies are most adapted to survive. Cool or cold temperatures with little sunlight favor the health of white skin. If the 12 children of Jacob, Israel, started their families out of the land of Egypt and then Canaan, we would only expect that their descendants would be people of color. The Europeans only wanted what they had envy in their hearts for, the land of brown and black people, which in ancient times was massive. They also knew that in order to do this, they would have to mix their race with the natives, making the people lighter. And they would also have to exterminate or enslave as many of the natives as possible. Example one, the Spaniards colonized and intermixed with the Filipinos. That's why there are light Filipinos and also the native original dark Filipinos termed Negritos, who still live in the Philippines, outside of the city, in the mountains. In Puerto Rico, 46% of its inhabitants have some African ancestry, despite over 70% of its inhabitants claiming themselves as white. Fact. Laws such as Regla del Sacar or Gracias al Sacar were like the opposite of the one drop rule, for anyone with black blood being black. In 1783, King Charles III of Spain issued out certificates in Puerto Rico that would cleanse people of so-called impure blood by providing them with documentation that could change their racial status of a mulatto, person with African blood, to that of a white, European white. The Afro-Indian Taino slash Arawakan slash Lucayan natives were enslaved and killed by the harsh conditions of colonization of the Spanish conquistadors. Before this, and before Christopher Columbus visited Puerto Rico, the face of the island was black by way of the natives' ancestry from South America and Africa. Puerto Rico now has a small population that sees themselves as of Afro-Puerto Rican origin. The invasion of the Europeans in Brazil has also played a big role in the whitenization of Brazil. Amongst the original native and blacks who were brought there as slaves, the Europeans changed the face and language of the people, just as they did in the Philippines with native Negritos or Eta people. In South America, in the 1800s, after slavery was abolished in Europe and in the Americas, the elite wanted white race mixing with the natives, which was called the Spanish Mestizaje movement. Their goal was to wipe out any trace of Africanism by making the Latino nations lighter. They also promoted the immigration of Europeans into Latino countries like Brazil instead of Africans, East Indians, or Asians. This was designed to slowly fade out the brown-skinned Brazilians. This didn't work, as you can see, as most of Brazil is mulattoes, mixed with different ethnicities, but still preserving their brown skin and African or Amerindian roots. The European Spaniards did, however, develop a caste system based on race for social control and to determine a person's worth in society. Here is how the Spaniards broke down the caste systems in the lands they colonized. 1. Peninsular, a European born in Spain. 2. Criollo, a white person with Spanish or European descent born in the Americas. 3. Mestizo, a person of mixed white European and Native Amerindian ancestry. 4. Pardo, a person of mixed white European, Native Amerindian, and African ancestry. 5. Indio, a person who is a pure native or indigenous to the Americas. 6. Mulatto, a person of mixed white European and black African ancestry. 7. Zambo, a person of mixed black African and Native Amerindian ancestry. 8. Negro, a person.
I bet they ain't have to tell him to get that money I had left up there.
African ancestry. Example, the Negritos of the Philippines were the natives of the island when the Spaniards arrived in the 1500s. The mixing of the white Europeans with the brown-skinned natives of various lands, if anything, created more people with different shades of brown and less white. This is because the white skin and blue eyes trait is recessive to the dominant traits of brown skin and brown eyes. In India, there are also different shades of people as well as a caste system set in place by whites invading nations used to control the people of India. Most often, Indian people of darker skin tones were of lower castes, example, the untouchables or Dalits, with black Africans living in India being the lowest of castes. These African blacks living on the west coast of India are called the Jambur, or cities, who just like blacks in America are the victims of social, political, and economic injustice when compared to the other people of India. There is a tribe of people called the Andaman tribe that look like and resemble Africans, are living on an island off the coast of India, but are still regarded as citizens of India. Most people living in America from India don't even know this information. It is the same reason why islands in certain areas of the world clearly show the African presence and root, but still are unknown to any of us. These certain countries and islands have not been invaded, colonized, or civilized by outsiders for hundreds of years. These places show the first natives of the land that were already there or had migrated thousands of years ago by way of Africa. Another perfect example is the extermination of the black native people of Tasmania, which is an island south of Australia. There is evidence of black and brown people all over the world that is hidden from mainstream westernized media. As Europeans and archaeologists dig up more artifacts, they are finding out more clues about the early civilization of man and how it relates to Africa. But yet, this will not be shown on mainstream TV for everyone to see. These archaeological finds prove that ancient civilizations were black civilizations. The world does not want this to be known. Again, this is trick knowledge, or better said, hidden knowledge. Chapter 7, Garden of Eden, Africa or Mesopotamia? Most people would agree that civilization started in Africa, in and around the Nile River. However, some believe that civilization started in the Garden of Eden in Mesopotamia, Middle East, in an area called the Fertile Crescent. This can be based off the creation story and the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden has been debated to be in either Africa or modern-day Iraq. But who is telling the truth? It says in Genesis 2:11 that the first river is called Pison, and it encompasses the whole land of Havilah. Genesis 2:10 through 11. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted, and became into 4 heads. The same name of the first is Pison. That is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx stone. The ancient Egyptians used onyx to make pottery and bowls, and thus should have had it readily available in Africa. Africa is known to have large quantities of gold and onyx. Bdellium was a gum resin similar to myrrh found in trees or shrubs found in Africa. In Genesis chapter 10, it says that the second son of Cush, Ethiopia, was Havilah. Genesis 10:7. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sapta, and Rama, and Sapteka, and the sons of Rama, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush, or Cush, was one of the four sons of Ham. The Kush Empire was vast, covering most of sub-Saharan Africa, and possibly also into Arabia/Middle East, under Cush's son, Nimrod. Nobody knows how far the Kush Empire extended before and after Nimrod's time. Ancient records, the Bible, ancient Sumerian relics, and artifacts have proven that the Kush Empire encompassed most of sub-Saharan Africa and extended all the way into Mesopotamia, Iran/Iraq, Assyria, Turkey/Syria/Iran/Iraq, and Arabia, Saudi Arabia/Yemen/Oman, by way of Nimrod, and also perhaps the famous Ethiopian queen Makeda of Sheba. It also says in Genesis 10 that one of the descendants of Shem was Havilah, the son of Joktan. Since Cush's son Havilah obviously came first, and would have been a lot older than Joktan's son, Havilah, we should assume that the river Pison ran through the land, Africa, that was named after Havilah, the son of Cush, since this was the area that Cush ruled over first. In addition, from reading Genesis 10, we see that Havilah was also the brother of Nimrod, the mighty hunter-warrior of God, who ruled Africa all the way east to Assyria, Babylon, the land of Shinar, Sumer, and the rest of Mesopotamia. Nimrod's empire existed before Abraham and the Hebrews. Fact: the Hebrew Book of Jubilees was found along with other religious canons in the Dead Sea Scrolls, found in Israel in the 1940s. The Book of Jubilees can still be found in Syriac, Greek, and Latin translations. The Hebrew version found in the Dead Sea Scrolls matched accurately with the complete Book of Jubilees version that the Ethiopians had in their Bible, still preserved after thousands of years. However, it is not in our King James Bible, along with other religious texts, such as the Hebrew Book of Jasher and Book of Enoch, which is also in the Ethiopian Bible. In the Hebrew Book of Jubilees, it mentions Nimrod, the Greek form of Nimrod, as being the father of Azarad, the wife of Eber, father of the Hebrews, and mother of Peleg. This means that if Nimrod was the father of Eber's wife, then the Hebrews would have black African Cushite blood, because Eber was known as the forefather of the Hebrews. Eber was Abraham's great, 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 great grandfather. So based on this account, if Nimrod was the father of Eber's wife Azarad, this would make Nimrod a late ancestor of Abraham as well. Fact: Shem, the father of all Semites, lived 600 years and lived after the flood 502 years. Eber, sometimes called Heber, from whence the word Hebrews comes from, lived 464 years and knew both Noah and Shem. Heber, outlived Abraham by 4 years. Terah, the father of Abraham, lived 205 years, was 130 years old when Abraham was born, and was alive when Noah and Shem were still alive. Abraham, son of Terah, lived 175 years, knew Shem, the son of Noah, and died before Eber, his great, 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 great grandfather, did. According to the Hebrew book of Jasher, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all knew Shem and Eber. In fact, it says Jacob was taught by Shem and Eber for 32 years, from when Jacob was 18 years old until Shem's death. Jasher 28:17-25. In Genesis 2:13, the second river that branches out of the Garden of Eden is the river Gihon, Nile River, and that it encompasses all of Ethiopia. Genesis 2:13. And the name of the second river is Gihon, the same is it that encompasseth the whole land of Ethiopia, sub-Saharan Africa, Kush. Back in ancient times, Ethiopia was the land of Kush or Kush, from which Nimrod's empire arose from. The Nile River begins from Lake Victoria, the largest tropical lake in the world, shared by Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. The Nile River ends in the Mediterranean Sea. The Nile River is the longest river in the world and is to many the only river in the world flows from south to north instead of north to south. There are some that say the river Eres or Arax is the river Gihon. This river runs through Turkey, Armenia, and Iran. This might be correct if Ethiopia or Kush also consisted of the Middle East. The basis for this is that in ancient times, Nimrod, the son of Kush, Ethiopia, conquered modern-day Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. This would then explain why the Bible said that the river Gihon encompassed the whole land of Ethiopia. This would also mean that ancient Babylonians, Iraq, Persians, Iran, Elamites, Iran and Iraq, and Assyrians, Turkey, Syria, North Iraq, and North Iran, were brown/black people, as their descendants would have been mixed with the sons of Cush, the ancient Ethiopians. The Nubians of Ethiopia can be seen on the walls of Egypt as very dark brown-skinned people. This is way before Africa or Ethiopia was invaded by the Arab Muslims or the Italians. This can also be seen by looking at ancient pictures from these areas, which surprisingly do show the people during that time to be brown/black people. It is important to remember that the Caucasian Arabs did not invade or conquer neither the Middle East nor North Africa until 600 AD, more than half a century after the fall of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. By this time, according to Bible prophecy, the Hebrew Israelites were long gone, scattered mostly into Africa and Arabia. Genesis 2:13-14. And the name of the third river is Hiddekel, Tigris, that is which goeth toward the east of Assyria, and the fourth river is Euphrates. The third and fourth rivers from Eden are commonly known as the Tigris and Euphrates River. These rivers flow through Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran into the Persian Gulf. Today, in the Middle East, the Euphrates River is drying up. But is this done by man or God? In Revelations 16:12, it talks about the Euphrates River drying up. Interestingly, none of the biblical events prophesied in Revelations prior to Revelation 16:12 have happened yet. The destruction of the earth that comes with the seven seals and the seven trumpets has not happened yet. So, how can the Euphrates River completely dry up without any of the events happening listed in the first 15 chapters of Revelations? Perhaps the events listed in Revelations, chapters 1 through 15, have not happened yet because the Euphrates River today in Mesopotamia is not the Euphrates River that we read in our Bibles. Or maybe, like stated previously, the Euphrates River drying up has to do with the works of man, Turkey, and not God. That would be the most logical sense. Nevertheless, 2 out of the 4 rivers coming out of the Garden of Eden, without a shadow of a doubt, are in the continent of Africa.
Family, it's time for the remix now. It's time for the remix. Give me just a minute. I'm changing speakers.
The Bluetooth device is connected successfully.
I got to give that speaker a break. That one's been going hard in the paint. Let's see here. Now we're gonna do a little bit of this white cargo.
Thomas Smythe nearly followed him. Under interrogation, the Earl's supporters claimed. Chapter 2. The Judge's Dream. The Kennebec River runs gently down through the wooded uplands of Maine to the sea. Its source is Moosehead Lake, a stretch of water so large that it once was mistaken for the China Sea. From this great lake, the Kennebec flows 150 miles through New England before draining into the North Atlantic near a windy point of land called Sabino Head. It was here that 400 years ago, a fortress was built by Englishmen, used by other Englishmen as their chattels or slaves. Fort St. George would be formidable had it survived. A blueprint discovered nearly 300 years later shows it with thick battlements, great crenellated gates, several mansions, a church, 50 other buildings, and a walled garden. A dozen cannon point towards the sea. Construction was well underway when the settlement was suddenly deserted, leaving the fort to crumble back into the earth. Today, the fort exists as the merest outline etched in the landscape, revealing little of the philosophy or vision that impelled men to build it. The settlement was the project of Sir John Popham, one of the most powerful men in the government of Queen Elizabeth I. Popham was the first to put to the test Sir Humphrey Gilbert's proposal for colonizing America with the dregs of England. What Popham tried would one day be one of the most hated features of English rule in America. Ambitions buried at Fort St. George were to live on and change the face of North America. Work on the short-lived fortress had begun in August 1607. It was to be the centerpiece of a new colony. A charter issued the previous year by King James I restated England's claim to Virginia, the entire length of the eastern American seaboard from Canada to Florida, and authorized the establishment of 2 colonies. One, under the aegis of Sir Thomas Smythe, was to be in the south, between the 38th and 41st parallels. The other, under the guidance of the Lord Chief Justice Sir John Popham, was to be located to the north in New England. The charter signaled a new approach to England's hoped-for conquest and share in the New World. Hitherto, all England's colonial ventures in America had been individualistic forays, each one ultimately dependent on the vision, finances, and staying power of one man. By the early 1600s, this was starting to be recognized as a fatal weakness. An anonymous broadside circulating at the time reflected on 20 years of failure. Private purses are cold comfort to adventurers, and have ever been found fatal to all enterprises hitherto undertaken by the English, by reason of delays, jealousies, and unwillingness to back that project which succeeded not at the first attempt. The broadside argued for a stock, a joint stock company that could take a long view and ride the kind of setbacks that had been the ruin of so many previous ventures. Joint stock companies were relatively new entities in which individuals owned shares they could sell without reference to their fellow stockholders. These companies were opening the far corners of the globe to English trade, so why not a joint stock company to fund the next big English push to colonize America? Interest in America had been largely dormant since 1590, when the financial drain persuaded Walter Raleigh to give up his Roanoke adventure. 12 years went by, and then a new round of exploration began. It was led by Bartholomew Gosnold, a friend of Richard Hakluyt and Raleigh. Accompanied by Bartholomew Gilbert, one of Sir Humphrey Gilbert's 6 sons, Gosnold landed in New England in 1602 and stayed for several months, trading and exploring. They returned with sensational reports that rhapsodized over the natural riches of the New World. The soil is fat and lusty, cherry trees like ours, but the stalks bear the blossom or fruit which are like a cluster of grapes. All sorts of fowls, whose young ones we took and ate at our pleasure. Ground nuts as big as eggs. Gosnold summed up their reaction as they caught the first sight of all this plenty. We stood a while as ravished. The following year, a merchant from Bristol, Martin Pring, landed in Virginia looking for the sassafras tree, the root of which was then used to treat the French pox and is today, in a marvelous piece of serendipity, used in the perfumery trade. 2 years after Pring, George Weymouth came looking for a settlement site in what is now Maine. Pring and Weymouth were down-to-earth seamen, with none of Gosnold's descriptive flair, but they did enough to stoke the fires of enthusiasm for America still more. "The land is full of God's good blessings," said Pring. Weymouth made the same point more graphically, returning with intriguing samples of plant and animal life, and 5 captured Native Americans all London wanted to see. Despite the fact that Gosnold and the other mariners had found not a scrap of evidence for the existence of gold mines, these expeditions sparked new speculation about gold.
See, this here is y'all know how I remix things. I'm doing both these books at the same time because they they both involve slavery. Because yes, white people were slaves too. And in order for us to understand the past, we got to, to understand the future, we got to understand the past. Everything is connected, everything intertwined, and a single garment of destiny, to quote the late Martin Luther King Jr. We all are here are one. We all been pitted together against each other for centuries by the powers that be, the principalities, as I should say. We wrestle against what? Principalities, right? That's the hierarchy, the bourgeoisie, as I like to call them. We don't supposed to hate each other. We're supposed to love each other. I say this every day. So here it is.
Waiting to be discovered in America. The fantastical stories of golden cities brought back 3 decades earlier by that wandering seaman David Ingram had not been forgotten, and American gold became the talk of taverns and counting houses. The Spanish dream of El Dorado, the Golden Man, had led to the discovery of fantastic treasures in South America. The English, it was argued, would find theirs in the northern continent. A taste of the fantastic hopes that developed can be had from Ben Jonson's satire on gold fever, Eastward Ho!, staged at the same time as Shakespeare was putting on Macbeth. Jonson imagines the lost Roanoke colonists marrying into the local population and living in a society literally covered in gold. "Why, man," exclaims a character, "all their dripping pans are pure gold, and all the chains with which they chain up their streets are massy gold. All the prisoners they take are fettered in gold, and for rubies and diamonds they go forth on holidays and gather 'em by the seashore." It was in this atmosphere that the charter authorizing the 2 new forays to America was drawn up, and 2 joint stock companies of knights, gentlemen, merchants, and other adventurers created for the purpose. The 2 principal aims were announced as bringing infidels and savages living in those parts to human civility, and the mining of gold, silver, and copper. 3 of the Crown's leading counselors helped draft the document.
Yep.
Robert Cecil, Chief Secretary of State, Sir Edward Coke, Attorney General, and the fearsome Lord Chief Justice, Sir John Popham.
But see, it was 11/11
Cecil
here. That's why I typed 11/11 in, because I'm on the East
company
Coast.
that was allocated the Southern Territory, lying roughly between what is now Florida and New York. It was composed of men drawn mainly from our city of London, and inevitably became known as the London Company.
I got a surprise for y'all. I downloaded another book this morning. That's what I need to do, because I told you I was cleaning up a while ago. I'm going to go ahead and schedule that live. I'll probably do that one. I'm going to do, let me see. Finish this chapter here. Then I'm going to go back to from Hebrews to slaves, because that one is real. That one real good. This one good too, but the Hebrews to slaves, I like the way I like the way he worded that, the way he's how can I say, narrating the book. Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Both of them are.
And later, the Virginia
Oh
Company.
yeah. See
The
that?
keep.
Y'all, I started talking about the books. I forgot to tell y'all. I had got y'all. I downloaded a surprise for y'all. Y'all gonna like it. Let me go ahead and give y'all the title of it. I'm gonna go ahead and get that one ready. Let's see. Is it in my library? Yeah, here it is. Sun, Moon, and Star. Sun, Moon, and Signs by Mari Silver. So what that y'all should already get the idea what that's about. Right, my loves?
Post of treasurer of the company, equivalent to managing director, was taken by Sir Thomas Smythe. Sir John Popham was the principal investor in the second company, drawn from our cities of Bristol and Exeter and of our town of Plymouth, and allocated New England. It came to be known as the Plymouth Company.
The Plymouth, huh?
Popham was a man whose
Plymouth
character
Rock.
was written in his face. In one portrait, he appears a physical giant, the scarlet robes of the High Court clutched around his bulk, a heavy, ugly face glaring out, cold eyes, cunning and suspicious, the face of a calculating, unstoppable bully. In his voluminous Lives of the Chief Justices of England, Lord Campbell refers to the portrait and adds decorously, I am afraid he would not appear to great advantage in a sketch of his
Get it,
moral
huh, Prophet?
qualities, which lest I do him an injustice I will not attempt. Sir John was the man who had passed the death sentence on Sir Walter Raleigh, telling him, it is best for man not to seek to climb too high, lest he fall. He had participated in the trial of Mary, Queen of Scots, and condemned to death Guy Fawkes and hundreds more. The miracle was that he did not join them on the gallows himself. Before he occupied one by one most of the great legal offices of state, John Popham had been a highwayman, and, according to one rumor, probably a garroter too. Popham was born in 1531 into an affluent Somerset family. He read law at Balliol College, Oxford, and in his 20s he was called to the bar and respectably married. Even then, however, he was exhibiting a different side to his character. He was a heavy drinker and a gambler, and according to Lord Campbell, either to supply his profligate expenditure or to show his spirit, Popham frequently sallied forth at night from a hostel in Southwark, with a band of desperate characters, and planting themselves in ambush on Shooter's Hill, or taking other positions favourable for attack and escape, they stopped travellers, and took from them not only their money, but any valuable commodities they carried with them, boasting that they were always civil and generous, and that to avoid serious consequences, they went in such numbers as to render resistance impossible. Popham's antics continued right through his 20s. Amazingly, he was never caught.
Greetings
in his
to
30s, he decided he could make as much money from the law as from highway robbery, and developed an extensive practice in southwest England that brought him to the attention of the Queen. With her rare ability to pick ruthless talent that could be used one day, Elizabeth arranged a seat in Parliament for him. The former highwayman became Speaker of the House, then Attorney General, and finally Lord Chief Justice. He was a hanging judge, says Campbell. Ordinary larcenies, and above all, in highway robbery, there was little chance of acquittal. It was the same with those who did not fit the Protestant orthodoxies the Crown was trying to mould. Sir John pursued outspoken Puritans and Catholic priests to the scaffold. Under him, hundreds of Jesuits and suspected sympathizers were sent to Tyburn or Smithfield to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. Or, if a woman, perhaps to be crushed to death or strangled before being burnt at the stake. When it came to the rich, Sir John could be lenient if the price was right.
Well,
there was no more corrupt age than the Elizabethan, and the future Lord Chief Justice proved himself as buyable as any. In the 1580s, a midwife's story horrified all who heard it. She told of being taken blindfolded in a closed coach to attend the delivery of a child in a great house, and after the birth, seeing a masked man seize the newborn infant and cast it into the fire, where it perished. When the story became known, a hue and cry was raised for the perpetrator of what Lord Macaulay called this horrible and mysterious crime. The murderer was tracked down, only to be let off after he paid the judge in the case a truly massive bribe in the shape of his mansion, Littlecote Hall in Wiltshire. John Popham was the judge. By this and other means he became a very rich man. He left behind him the greatest estate that has ever been amassed by any lawyer. This intimidating man was involved in colonialism years before the Plymouth Company was created. In the 1580s, the Queen decided to stamp out rebellion forever in Munster by confiscating the vast estates there of the Desmond family and repopulating them with English Protestants. Catholic Irish were ordered out, and the land was offered at twopence an acre to English landlords who would undertake to plant it with tenants from England. Popham was one of many who saw himself accumulating a huge Irish estate. He assembled more than 80 families and dispatched them to Munster. However, another English worthy was already off the mark and had tenanted the land, leaving Popham's tenants no choice but to return home. A few decades later, a not dissimilar scheme called the headright system would be introduced in America, and the wealthy would become still richer by obtaining grants of land for importing the poor to settle the New World. The experience in Munster did not deter Popham from such schemes, and his lordship was soon propelled towards the far more ambitious project of colonizing America. He was now in his late 50s, so why did the New World consume him in the last years of his life? The avarice of a rapacious old man certainly played a part, but for Popham, it was also about the pursuit of a dumping ground for the criminals that even he, the draconian law officer, could never eradicate. As we have seen, social conditions had produced levels of crime that frightened the gentry. Now, as the century ended, a new crime wave swept over England. This was the price of peace with Spain, for, as ever when a major war ended, newly released soldiers and mariners spread across the realm. Many of these men had been criminals beforehand and returned to their former profession. In Plymouth, London, Bristol, and York, they had taken the Queen's shilling as an alternative to the rope. In the late 1590s, when war with Spain wound down and peace negotiations began, the land then swarmed with people who had been soldiers, who had never gotten, or else quite forgotten, any other vocation, too proud to beg, too lazy to labor. These infected the highways with their felonies. In 1597, the year before the Treaty of Vervins officially ended the war, Popham had pushed through Parliament the tough new Vagrancy Act described in the previous chapter, under which persistent rogues could be banished to parts beyond the seas at the behest of members of the Privy Council. The act was a prelude to what was to come. 5 years later, Popham drew up an order in council identifying those parts beyond the seas where England's unwanted could be dumped: Newfoundland, the East and West Indies, France, Germany, Spain, and the Low Countries, or any of them. As will be seen, some of these were meant in all seriousness. Virginia would soon be added to the list. At this point, an enigmatic character entered Popham's life. Sir Ferdinando Gorges was captain and keeper of Plymouth Castle. He was said to be a vain, very avaricious man, hardly any more attractive than Sir John. The two met in 1601 during that most tangled of Tudor dramas, the attempted coup by Robert Devereux, Earl of Essex. Gorges was supposedly an Essex supporter. When the coup began, Essex entrusted him with guarding 3 members of the Queen's Council who were being held in Essex House, the Earl's sumptuous Thameside palace. Popham was among the captives. To their surprise, Gorge turned out to be their rescuer rather than jailer, and he had the party rowed upriver to Whitehall and safety. It later transpired that from the beginning, Gorge had leaked details of the plot to Essex's longtime rival, Walter Raleigh, who in turn kept the Queen constantly updated. Gorge was the key witness against Essex when the former royal favourite was tried for treason, condemned, and sent to the block on Tower Hill. While his part in the plot was investigated, Gorge was imprisoned in the Tower. As that other recurrent figure in our story, Sir Thomas Smythe, had learned, any involvement in the Essex plot, however slight, damned you in the old Queen's eyes. Sir Ferdinando found himself held for 9 months and deprived of his military post in Devon. When James I succeeded to the throne, he was immediately reinstated and held in high favour. Gorge backed George Weymouth's 1605 expedition to the North Atlantic coast. Upon his return, Weymouth presented him with 5 members of the Wabanaki and Pemaquid tribes he had captured. The idea was to exhibit them around England to drum up interest in the colonial enterprise. The captives demonstrated their skill in handling a dugout canoe on the River Thames, and, according to the Spanish ambassador, Don Pedro de Zuniga, they were quickly taught English so they could say how good that country, America, is for people to go there and inhabit it. Gorge wanted Popham's help in his American ventures, and presented the Lord Chief Justice with 2 of his Native Americans. The 2 Englishmen were soon partners, and they aimed to bring together burghers from London and Plymouth, and members of the gentry who had previously invested in expeditions. Top of the list would have been great merchants like Smythe, and aristocrats like Henry Wriothesley, the brilliant Earl of Southampton, who was William Shakespeare's patron. Most of the lobbying appears to have taken place in the vast new banqueting hall of the Middle Temple, under the coats of arms of Tudor knights that still hang there today over the heads of other ambitious lawyers. In the winter of 1605 to 1606, Popham approached the Attorney General, Sir Edward Coke. He laid the emphasis not on the riches to be had in America, but on England's desperate need for a dumping ground for criminals. Coke reported their conversation. My Lord Chief Justice, foreseeing in the experience of his place the infinite number of cashiered captains and soldiers, of poor artisans that would and cannot work, and of idle vagrants that may and will not work, whose increase threatens the state, is affectionately bent to the plantation of Virginia. He explained that the judge wanted the go-ahead to call the undertakers, gentlemen, merchants, etc., unto him, and by their advices set down the best manner of project, which being agreed upon shall be speedily returned to your lordships, because the best season for the journey approaches. More talks followed, with a great deal of haggling over who was to be in control. Eventually, the Virginia Company was chartered with 2 divisions, a London company and a Plymouth company. The charter helped to give birth to a myth. Ostensibly, it was a remarkable document from a king who espoused the divine right to rule and conceded no powers without a struggle. In a section on how the colonies were to be governed, James stated, "I do declare and order that my loving subjects in America shall forever enjoy the right to make all needful laws for their own government, provided only that they be consonant with the laws of England." 260 years later, when the American Civil War, the war to end slavery, had been won by the northern states, the New England historian John A. Poor traced the region's belief in human rights back to James's charter. "This charter of liberties was never revoked," he quoted. "It was a decree of universal emancipation, and every man of any color from any clime was by this act of King James redeemed, regenerated, disenthralled the moment he landed on the soil of America between the 34th and 45th degrees. 150 years before the decree of Lord Mansfield, threw off the chains and fetters of Africans in England. It was bunkum. There would be forms of both white and black slavery even in New England throughout the colonial period. Once the charter was issued for his Plymouth Company, Popham wasted no time. His position as Chief Justice gave him a controlling influence in all the jails and penitentiaries in the realm. Although there is no chapter in verse on his use of convicts, snippets of information from contemporaries leave little doubt that Popham exploited his power. He stalked Virginia out of all the jails of England, reported John Aubrey, the 17th century's master of the biographical sketch. Popham sent out men who were pressed to that enterprise, endangered by the law, wrote the Earl of Stirling, a confidant of Gorges and later a colonist himself. The image lingers in the mind's eye of the hatchet-faced Popham handing down rough justice, offering convicts facing execution the option that would become commonplace in later decades: slave for years in exile in America, possibly to die there, or go to the gallows. This choice had the happy effect not only of saving lives, but of aiding Sir John's financial endeavors. Likely-looking specimens for transportation, the young and strong, would no doubt have been sent to Sir John for inspection. It is difficult to imagine the Lord Chief Justice of England vetting each felon and vagabond in the notorious foulness of Jacobean
I tried
jails.
to come in there, but it kept buffering.
The Spanish ambassador to London, Don Pedro de Zuniga, was worried about the threat to Spanish interests in America. He complained to Popham and was assured that colonization aimed only to drive thieves out of England.
So y'all might as well just
they were then to be drowned in the sea. In May 1606, Popham and Gorges organized a trial voyage. A vessel called the Richard was dispatched across the Atlantic with 29 men to establish a bridgehead. Also on board were 2 of the captured Native Americans sent along to act as guides. The expedition put Popham 8 months ahead of the rival London Company, which was fitting out its small fleet in the port of London as Christmas approached. The Richard never made landfall. Her captain, Henry Challens, ignored instructions to sail directly west and took the more traditional and supposedly safer route south, hugging the African coast before turning the helm westwards. He ran straight into a Spanish fleet off Santo Domingo, and the Richard was captured. Her ship's company and her would-be colonizers ended up as galley slaves. It is thought significant by historians that Popham made no effort to free his colonists. It must be admitted, says his biographer, that he was not full of urgency about the men's recovery. One reason suggested was that if they were criminals, it was natural that he should leave them to their fate. In a letter to Robert Cecil, Popham wrote, "If the natives were to be had again, in my opinion, it would serve to good purpose." But he made no remarks about the others from the Richard. A year later, the judge was ready to try again, with a much larger expedition. In May 1607, 120 men shipped out from Plymouth. They sailed in 2 vessels, the Mary and John, captained by Raleigh Gilbert, a son of Sir Humphrey Gilbert, and the wonderfully named Gift of God, a shallow-drafted flyboat designed to navigate shallow, unexplored rivers. She was captained by Popham's nephew, George, who was appointed leader of the expedition. Their orders were secret.
Ain't that some shit? That the ship, the one that had the African slaves on it was named Jesus, and that was what named the good Lord. They had the white slaves on it. And boy, these motherfuckers hell. Damn.
Not to be revealed until they arrived in the New World. Skid Juarez, one of the tribesmen captured by Weymouth, was sent as a guide. Sir Ferdinando Gorges was still very much involved in the venture, but it was now so much the Lord Chief Justice's project that the colony they planned would be known by everyone, and by history too, as the Popham Colony. Sir Ferdinando, it seems, contented himself with dreaming of his profits. One of his early biographers, the one-time governor of Massachusetts, James Sullivan, described Gorge as wanting a colony run on feudal lines in which he expected to enjoy the profits at his ease without crossing the Atlantic. His expectations were very great. The gift of God arrived at the mouth of the Kennebec on the 13th of August, and the Mary and John followed 3 days later. The 120 colonists were rowed ashore to the windy headland and gathered together for what was first business of every European expedition to the New World, a service of thanks on dry land.
That's right.
The
That's
group
right.
thanked the Lord for a safe delivery. Next came the moment all those present had been waiting for, their orders. A list of secret instructions issued by Sir John Popham was taken from the sealed chest in which it had travelled. George Popham read them out. Few details survive, but the imperative was undoubtedly the search for gold. The discovery of mines was the main intended benefit, reported William Strachey, secretary of the Virginia Company, who wrote a history.
If you did, put a 1 in the chat. If not, y'all probably need to check y'all notifications because I just scheduled a live. I'm gonna drop out of here, y'all. It's gonna be before 12. I put 12 anyway. Then I'll be back tomorrow with part 3 of a white cargo and from Hebrews to slavery. But I'm gonna drop out of here and I'm gonna come back with sun, moon, and signs. I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all what that's about. Y'all should already know what it's about, but from the title.
This is
Nope. See, they're trying to play on me already. Sun, moon, and signs. Secrets of the 12 zodiac signs. Different sun, moon, astrology combinations, personality types, and compatibility by Mari Silver. That's what I'm gonna start now. So I'm gonna y'all drop down. And I'm coming right back up. I say, I'm coming right back now. That's why I really wasn't saying that.